OK, well, let's go to a guest who was actually somebody who actually was a Big Brother contestant when it was being made by Endemol, now bought by the company Banijay UK. That's Narinder Kaur. Good morning to you, Narinder.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, can I just ask you, I mean, look, we know, the Russell Brand has been a huge star. He's been in big Hollywood movies. He's a very successful comedian. He's had a very successful book. He's huge on YouTube and on social media. He was considered to be so influential that Ed Miliband in 2015, his Labour leader, met up with him, did an interview with him in a bid to get young people to vote, to get his endorsement, get young people to vote, even though, of course, Russell Brand said don't bother voting to people, which wasn't perhaps the most helpful thing in the world. But, he's been a big character. Most people would, know who he is. It's why he's front page of every newspaper 2 days in a row. What did you make of the allegations when you first read about them and saw the Dispatches programme on Channel 4?
Well, I think the first thing I felt was obviously innocent until proven guilty, and that's so important to our judicial system. And I also think that these ladies who've come forward, they must be taken seriously. However, as an ex-contestant who was on the show, I met Russell Brand a couple of times and went on his show. The only thing I can say in regard to if you were going to ask a question about duty of care, in those days in TV, and I spent a lot of time with the runners, TV didn't care. The TV executives did not care about ex-contestants, and it was like a hierarchy: executives, producers, etc., etc., etc. And when you were at the bottom rung of that ladder, which contestants were and runners, you were treated very badly. You were treated with disrespect.
What way disrespect?
If you ever had any complaints, they were not taken seriously.
Right. You were a bit part. You were a cog in the machine. You didn't really matter.
You didn't matter at all, and how dare you complain about anything? They almost looked at you like you were the muck on their shoes, like, go away now, we don't want to know now.
Okay.
And it was very hard to even speak to someone at the top of the ladder, and you were made to feel silly if you had any complaint as well. Very silly and stupid and young.
Yeah. Okay. So, and in terms of, say, you say you met Russell Brand a couple of times. So,
yes.
So have I. Never had any issues. And I think there'll be plenty of women who haven't. I mean, he's been very, very open that he basically was he was a heroin addict and he got clean and he was a sex addict. I'm not really convinced by this idea of being a sex addict. I think you just you're a narcissist who's just looking after your own needs at all times. And women are expendable. We can see that. He's now married with 2 children, 1 on the way. He says he's changed his ways. He's now clean. He's living a different life. I mean, who are we to question that? But the key thing here is that he's very open about his behaviour. And it appears that his behaviour was very open, according to these claims, and we understand other people have backed it up, that when he was on this show, they would have audience members, they got young university students, and he would basically ask his runner, the junior sort of production assistants, to just give my number or get the number of that girl in the audience over there, 2 or 3 of them. There'd be a phone call, come to my hotel, come out to a bar.
Well, I think it could have probably even been easier than that. I was, I'd be on those shows. The hotel was next door to the studios at Endemol, and the people in the audience, you're piled with alcohol. You're given alcohol. You feel, on this show. And Russell Brand, remember, having met him a couple of times, I can't say one way or the other. He was just very nice, very charismatic.
That's exactly the word. He owns the room. He owns the room.
And he's got this magnetic pull, and you can't help but be drawn to him. And he was just very nice. So if you're an audience member, you've had a bit of alcohol, you're watching this show, you're feeling, oh my God, we're on TV. I can see the pull. I don't think it was as hard as the way you're saying that, you get the runner and you give the number. I think it was way easier. The hotel was next door.
Yeah, and there was next. But of course, you've got to remember again. He was a big star. He's still a big star, and we know. I know how I felt as a groupie when I was a Durrani in my day. You'd have been over the moon to be invited to one of their rooms, and I mean that's the reality. But this is the thing. There's a very different thing between, as he said, consensual, promiscuous, one-night stand sex, which is entirely legal and entirely up to the 2 people involved. And frankly, any woman who was expecting anything different from him, I think, what were you thinking? You're deluded. And it is narcissistic behaviour. But that's perfectly fine. And the allegations we hear about it's gone too far. Let's have a little listen and a watch to what Russell Brand had to say in a statement he put out on YouTube. He released it on Saturday evening before that Channel 4 Dispatches show. This is what he had to say.
Amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies, and as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent.
So, Narinder,
the only thing I will say, Julie, is because you said, you know, what else were you expecting? You have to remember that if you're young and you're in that audience and you've had some alcohol, you may think, well, oh, I know what I'm getting myself in for.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're getting yourself for once you get into that hotel room. You may suddenly feel, as a woman, oh, my goodness,
I've changed my mind.
Maybe it
okay, well, this is the issue, isn't it? And this is where is the duty of care here? Because we had different allegations against the BBC, Channel 4, Endemol, now owned by Banijay, Endemol making the Big Brother shows. The key thing, I mean, the BBC, we've actually got some stuff that went out on air, him making comments about the newsreader. I mean, just outrageous comments about a professional woman in her job while doing her work, and about... I mean, just too crude for me to discuss on air. But I'm amazed that that wasn't an instant being called in and told anything like that. You're out if you do that again. Narinder, let me finish. Channel 4, again, you know, a duty of care in terms of the production company. We know that one of the contracts that Russell Brand had with Endemol actually said you must not have sex with members of the production team because they were concerned about it. And yet we had one woman who said she worked as a runner for Endemol, and so she was a young woman assigned to work for Russell Brand, was alone with him a lot. Again, totally inappropriate decision-making by those companies. Do you think that the senior executives would have known what was going on and whether criminal behaviour or not, as is alleged, should have acted sooner, should have done more?
Because you're asking me, and I'm going to say, of course they should have, but they would have turned a blind eye. The senior executives in Endemol, in my experience, and from all of my experiences of years of going back and forth there, they turned a blind eye. They didn't really care.
Do you think they knew?
I barely saw them there. I would have said, because it's such an incestuous industry that word always went round. There was always gossip about one thing and the other. I would say yes, they would have known. In my experiences, they would have known everything that was going on. There was always an eye and ear to the ground, and I would be astonished if they didn't know what was going on in the studio while their show was going on. You got to remember, this was TV. They were more bothered about ratings. Yeah. They didn't care what was going on behind the TV screen. Yeah. No one did.
And just finally, what do you think should happen now? We have got more women coming forward. There's going to be these probes in the production companies and in the TV companies. What do you think should happen next?
Julia, what can they do now? This is like historical, you know, things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's almost like, well, it's actually too late. What can we do now? I mean, there has been an investigation, but the senior producers would have moved on. Producers have moved on. And I'm not sure who's going to say, hang on, hands up, we did wrong. I don't think anyone's going to take any responsibility if these poor ladies, you know, are telling the truth. You know, what can they do now?
Yeah, OK, really good to talk to you, Narinder Kaur, former Big Brother contestant under when Endemol obviously were making it. Just say Banijay, who now own Endemol, they have released a statement saying, in light of the very serious allegations raised by dispatches in the Times, the Sunday Times investigation relating to the alleged serious misconduct of Russell Brand while presenting shows produced by Endemol in 2004 and 2005, Banijay UK has launched an urgent internal investigation and will cooperate with any requests for information from broadcast partners and external agencies. We also encourage anybody who feels they're affected by Brand's behaviour while working on these productions to contact us in confidence.